All right. Well, hello in the day of tone, I guess we could say. This is a tone day. And we are talking about something that was actually recommended in our Facebook group, which if you're not a part of our
Yes,
Facebook
thank you.
group,
Thank you.
yes, thank you very much. If you're not a part of the group, please come and join. We love these suggestions for topics as well as questions, or if you put together your rig for the first time and you want to show it off. We would love to see it. You know, it's cool to see people that also love to build and they love to experiment. So check it out. But this topic is going to be based around wirelesses, where I have a bit more experience for this kind of stuff recently, just because I've been doing a lot more of it, and a lot more of these like mobile churches, fly racks for some bands, as well as like you'll get them on pedal boards because they can be that small. But I'm curious for you, Mason, where do you have like where do you lean towards? Do you lean towards, yeah, I like wirelesses when I need it, or nah, I'm a cable to the board type of guy?
Hmm. I would say if I were to be in one camp, it would be the anti-wireless group. In a lot of that is because wireless systems are low impedance, and so for the types of effects that I like to run, I like to run univibes. I like to run fuzzes. Sometimes I'll run a treble booster if I'm feeling really kind of risky. And none of those like low impedance signals. And so as soon as you go wireless, you're kind of providing those pedals a very compromised signal comparatively to what they want to see.
Gotcha.
I will caveat this, though, to say that I can completely understand that if you are doing a performance and you are part of Taylor Swift's band or some sort of live application where the guitar is not the star and is there more ornamentally, that I understand that the theatrical elements are diminished if you're cabled to the pedal board.
Yeah.
As better as that would be, I understand that reality. So I don't choose it for myself, but I do not hold it against people that do use wireless systems, and I embrace them fully. And they can still go to tone heaven as far as I'm concerned.
No, I think that's great. I think there's like I saw a YouTube video a while ago from someone that was like bashing on wirelesses, and they're basically like they like boldly said it like you're a joke if you used it, which I thought was a little bit bold in the sense.
I said that.
No, someone said that. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to name names. It was not you.
Oh,
no.
I was like, if I said that would have been a harsh critique.
No, it was someone else. They had said something, and it was just one of those like, oh, okay, that's interesting because like they come in handy for a lot of people, and like I'm only playing at my church, but for me, the less amount of stuff that I could have to step on and we have to get off the stage really quickly or get on, or as someone that unfortunately I was the guy that ended up wiring our entire rack system because we're a church plant. I'm always having to walk out to front of house to adjust something or help someone do something, and I don't want to put my guitar down. So it ends up being a convenience thing. Seeing it from the aspect of like a lot of these bands, like the band I just did 2 fly racks for the band Waking as Romans, everything is automated in their rack, in their computers, changing all their presets. So having wireless units, they can run around the stage, no problem. I mean, you'll see the same thing like vocalists. I mean, there's vocalists that will only use like Spencer from the band Under Oath. Like he only uses a handheld wired mic, and he's forever since they performed, where you get bands like the vocalist with the Data Remember, he'll use a wireless handheld just because it's convenient. He can run around the stage, no one's tripping over. So there are like definitely pros and cons. But then you get like guitarists like Joe Bonamassa. I saw him, one of my clients, Josh Smith, plays with Joe, and I got the drive over to see them when they were here in Dallas. And Joe uses a super long cable. He plugs straight in, and I can understand it because that, especially because the guitar is the main focus. I think when you get into the aspect of like people trying, running around the stage, not trying to trip over each other because you're tied down to that one area, especially if you're in a band that you want to move around the stage, it can be really handy. There's also a lot of units out there like this one I have. This is a Line 6 G. It's
a classic.
Yeah, it's a G30. This is one of the first ones I had. I've had the G30, the 50, the 70, and now I have Sennheiser units, the rack units. But like stuff like this is really good because it's small. I mean, it's as small as a pedal. It's a little bit wider, but it can fit under your board if you need the convenience factor. I always recommend when you have like a wireless unit, like you're utilizing like an AB box to switch between a cable and a wireless, like that kind of stuff. So I would say I love them. I think they're really cool. It's just one of those things that, like, when you start looking at, like you were saying, the impedance and everything, like a lot of these units can't adjust that kind of stuff. Like, I think the most you can do is like a cable tone on this one. So you can do a 15 or 30 feet cable tone, which ironically enough, it also shows in meters. So for Grant, who's moving into his new shop right now, that's for you, Grant. Well, this is it shows in the meters. So I think there's certain, like, there's some of these new units that have come out, especially like the Sennheiser stuff, connect with your computer. You can really do a bunch of like nitty gritty, like adjustments and stuff to really make it work. I think it just kind of depends. It depends on, like, it's kind of like, people buying cheap power supplies, I guess. Like, you're like, oh, I got this Amazon Basics one for like $39.99. And like, as a cheap power supply that's literally powering your entire board, like, you don't always want to go cheap. The same thing will apply, I think, when it comes to wireless units. Like, it is literally the bridge between your guitar and your board to make you have sound. So it's one of those things, like, you look for reliability, you look for how long the cable, how long the signal will go, as well as the type. Like, if you're having to dial into a frequency, if you like, this is like a fixed frequency, has Velcro on the back. I bought it on Facebook used for our acoustic board for one of our acoustic musicians. So it's it's one of those things where you don't have to, all you have to do is mess with the channel. So I think, like, looking in, and I'll just pull up a tab really quick because I have some of these already pulled up. Is gonna be the Sennheiser. Sennheiser is one of my favorites just because it's the one I have mostly been using, but there's stuff like Sure, that's really good. So, like, looking at the first one, we got like this Sennheiser. This is for an inner monitor, and you may look at the price and go, "Oh man, that's a lot." It's because when you start getting into stuff that's a lot cheaper, like, I think when I started out, I had like the Galaxy. I had this one. It was the Galaxy Audio. And for me, like, this one, I remember, I remember getting this one. I remember not knowing what any of these numbers were, not knowing what AS 950. I didn't know what frequency was. Like, I didn't know anything. And for, you think, oh, 229, yeah, but like, depending on where you're playing, what band you're in, like what band doesn't like frequency you're in, you could get some really, really bad dropout. Whereas when you start getting into these units, yes, the frequency, depending on the frequency, because nowadays there's so many older units that these frequencies you can't even use. So like, you'll go to a venue like with these, and you'll actually go and scan through your frequencies. And if you're using multiple of these, definitely connected to like an Ethernet cable or something. But you can actually scan all the frequencies, and it'll auto-populate all of the frequencies, which is really cool. But you start running into half of these like frequencies you can't even use because they're taken up by radio stations, or they're taken up by other places that use these frequencies. So having something that has like a screen, as you can see the frequency, you can see the sensitivity that you can adjust a dB, you can plus or minus how much dB. It will show your frequency for AF for both sides of the antenna, so you can understand like if you're losing signal. That's a really big thing, whereas these smaller units you don't get. They're still really great. Especially these, like if you look up the line 6, the line 6 wireless. Oh, if I can spell today.
Lionel 6.
Lionel 6. Like, I'll go to Sweetwater. They have a lot of great, like a lot of these, like the relay, like they're really great units. That they do the job. I tend to stay away from the little stubby ones, because when you start, if you have a strat, like if Mason, you have plenty of strats. I don't have any strats, so like a lot of these ones don't fit as easily. I think some of them do. They just stick out and they look kind of funky. Like that's like where you start to get into.
But should we really call him stubby, Brian? That's not very kind. Full figured wireless.
They just a little bulky. How about we say they had too much gain, and they bulked up a little too much. Where as you get like these systems where they have a body pack, you can attach it to your strap. It's a lot easier to change out a battery. These smaller ones actually plug into the unit to charge, which is handy, but it's not as convenient. It's stuff like that where I know like the G50 and G70 units, like those are all battery packed, but a lot of them are discontinued, I think, because they're just upgrading the frequency stuff. So I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. You got guitars, Sennheiser. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the Sennheiser. I've never had the Shure stuff. I have had Shure microphones, which have been really good. Like the Shure in-ear, the PSM 900. This is like their minimal, I think, when it comes to in-ear monitoring systems. But I've seen stuff like your video just came out last week with Kieth Scott, Mason, and on Keith's rig, when I had the opportunity to fly out to Vegas to rebuild his rack, they were using like this. I think it was something like this system where it was all of his wireless units. I think he had 4 receivers in this one rack unit in his rack. So he was switching between.
This is just for IEMs, or this is for guitars?
This is for just guitars. So he's switching like the inner monitor tech they had. I think they had Shure inner monitors, Shure or Sennheiser, I can't remember. But for the guitars, they definitely, it's one of those things is like you'll get a lot of bands that they'll use Shure microphones, but then they'll use Sennheiser in-ears because they don't want like to have a bunch of conflict, especially when it comes to frequencies. So I think they had Sennheiser packs for ears, and then they had Shure guitars because they had the newest Shure system where this one U rack system where you could see I was showing that was a single pack. A lot of these rack units have like 4 packs. Like you can do 4 packs. You can plug it into a router, and when you get to a venue, it'll basically auto-populate all the new frequencies. So there's a lot of stuff out there. It's like over 10 grand though. So it's one of those things that like, unless you're in a band that can afford that, that's a big thing.
Right. That's probably their catering budget for like one date or something like that.
And it charged like it has another one U rack that actually like you take the pack and you plug it into the rack thing, and it charges the pack. So like that kind of stuff gets really, really cool and really handy. But it also switches between how many guitars he's using, how many acoustics he's using, and they can easily just switch it. You can route them out to different parts of the signal. It's a really cool unit. I just think it's one of those things that people will see and, be like, oh, I'm not sure if I can trust this, which I can understand. But I really think it comes down to like the quality of the system you're using. Even microphones. Like I did the one thing I probably shouldn't have done. I bought a Sennheiser microphone with having Sennheiser inner monitors, and I'm getting some crosstalk between them. So I'm in the middle trying to figure stuff like that. So it just really comes down to figuring out like how these all work together, getting the right frequency, where you live, where you're traveling to. If you're in a band that's traveling all over the place and you're going overseas, make sure you get something that will work kind of everywhere, because the last thing you want to do is get somewhere and then you have to run like a 50-foot cable to a rack or something, and you're kind of tied down to that spot. If you have to do that, you have to do that. But it's not, it's, you know, it's just doing the research, I think, when it comes down to that kind of stuff. So, I mean,
it's not so glamorous when you're doing the ego ramp and you've got a 100-foot cable.
It is not. It is not. No, I saw one guy, he had, which was a smart idea. He had two radial SGI boxes. He had one at the rack and he had one at the front of the stage, coil up with a guitar cable. And he was like, if my wireless ever dies, I can just go pick up my guitar and plug straight in, but not lose, you know, not have that 100-foot cable tone, you know, some loss in it, which I thought was a very interesting. I never really thought about that. It was just one of those things that I think a lot of people just go, oh, that wireless will never die, or oh, this will never happen. And it's just like, never say never. It's almost just like always having a backup plan for a lot of the stuff. So I think when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's just really doing your research, just kind of having an idea of like what you're trying to do. And then from there, just like I said, it's like looking at these different units and kind of budgeting what you're thinking, because I think from an aspect of buying something cheap, like I said, it's the same thing. It's the quality over quantity type of thing. So like if you're spending $200 on this unit, there's a really good chance, like especially in inner monitors, these units are really, really cheap. They can, I literally picked this up on Facebook Marketplace from a guy for $30 because he was just trying to sell it. So I just think it kind of just depends, really. But for like you, man, I'm curious, like, because you do a lot of, like, do you see, like, it's not a thing for session players, I'm assuming. Session players are probably sitting down, right? They're sitting right there.
Yeah, this is 100%. This is 100% a live application thing. There'd be really no reason for anybody to be using them.
Yeah.
For any sort of session related stuff.
Yeah.
But again, I think that there's value in depending again on what the reason is. Like when, as you mentioned, guys like a Joe Bonamassa or a John Mayer, like those guys are not going wireless. Maybe acoustically John Mayer may go wireless. I'm not sure about that, but definitely electric.
Yeah.
There isn't.
Yeah.
But I would predict it's probably still cable, even if it's acoustic. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where there a sonic difference. There absolutely is, and that's just not make believe, and that's not me worshiping a witch doctor sort of thing. There is a palpable difference in the way that things sound, because you're replacing what was formerly a hardwired coaxial cable with something that is invisible,
digital,
an invisible signal that's being transmitted, from this pack to the receiver, and then being put through your pedals. And again, it's not saying that it's unusable.
Yeah.
It's just a compromise, and I think it just depends on like what is the gig?
Mm-hmm.
Does it call for this sort of thing? And if it does, then I think obviously you're going to adjust your expectations to know that, okay, there's certain things that are not going to work as well. If I'm used to using fuzzes, if I'm used to using an old Univibe, if I'm used to using a treble booster, if I'm used to using a vintage style wah-wah pedal, these are all things that are going to sound worse or not the way that you would expect, let's say.
Yeah.
I guess worse is subjective, but they're not going to sound as they were designed because they're going to be receiving a low impedance signal. Because in essence, once you exit the receiver of the buffer, everything from there on is low impedance. So it's as if you ran a buffer. And again, just like buffers, quality, it can be very different from every unit. But once you're in that ecosystem, I don't know how critical it is anyway at that point. Like it's already kind of changing the fundamentals of the tone. And as Brian said, there's some that have the ability to compromise and compensate, rather, for the sound and be able to get, more cable loss if you kind of like the sound of a coily cable, or kind of get this more bright and strident sound by reducing that cable. And even companies like Radial make controls that you can put on your wireless pack to simulate cable runs. I think they call it like a drag control.
Yeah.
And you can, and that's not to be confused with, it's like you have a miniature drag queen on your, on your wireless, but it's like simulating sort of like kind of some resistance and kind of cable capacitance that might be happening.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, it might be a thing. You have this, their drag control. But anyway, it's super cool.
Yeah.
And I actually think that those kind of help. Like a lot of people will say that those little Radial boxes, and they're tiny.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to see if I can find a little picture of it here that I can pull up.
I think they're like, are they like a brown? I think they're brown.
I know. I think they're kind of blue.
Oh, they blue. I'm thinking of a different one.
I found one. Yeah, they're really. It's called a Dragster. Yeah,
Dragster.
and then I do see the drag control.
I guess that would be kind of compared to like
and it's got like these little loops that are built in.
I was gonna say it's kind of compared to like a power supply having like a sag control to do like a
sort of. Yeah. Here, I'm gonna share my screen here so you can see what I'm talking about. Or everybody can see what I'm talking about. So if you take a look here, you can see how it kind of just looped, like you just kind of zip tie it basically to your strap, because it's got these kind of loops. And then the drag control thing is just like a little wheel, and you can use that to kind of help. And it's all passive.
Very cool.
And I've seen guys use these effectively to be able to kind of get a little more of the semblance of a cabled feel and tone.
Interesting.
Sometimes, especially in the early the early digital ones, they would sound quite a bit different. And ironically, there's even people who have tried to go to the really old school ones to get a specific sound, because it was said that AC/DC and Angus Young used these really sort of primitive wireless units, and that became emblematic of the sound because it added this gain stage that would be hitting the front of the amp, or be hitting the guitar and then from the guitar and then hitting the front of the amp. And so there's been like a whole sort of little cottage industry of, people that are making pedals that simulate the preamp in this old wireless that you can put in front of your rig and kind of get the sound of the Angus Young AC/DC thing, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And they sound really, it's basically, it's just a preamp, but it sounds really interesting. And I think,
that's amazing.
So anyway, there are elements that are really cool. But before we go any further, I want to break for a moment and talk about some of the sponsors that make our podcast possible. The first of which are our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas. Now, some of these wirelesses they may have or may be able to special order. So if you're talking about wirelesses and you're thinking that you might want to get one, they could be a place to consult. They have a great staff that is very knowledgeable. And you can peruse their website at guitarsanctuary.com or go in person if you're in the McKinney area and ask them about some of these things, in addition to all the different boutique pedals, amplifiers, guitars that they may have. Great store, great service, great people. Head over to guitarsanctuary.com, and by supporting them, you are in turn supporting us and making this podcast possible. Next, our friends over at Neural DSP have released a brand new plugin that is something unlike they've ever done before, which is a vocal plugin. And wouldn't you believe it, we're actually using this plugin as we speak, because all of our podcasts for the last several weeks since we've been made aware of this, and Neural has graciously given us access to this plugin, we've been able to use it on all of our podcasts in order to do some of our corrections to our voice. And it has everything from real-time vocal tuning to gates to sculpting with plenty of different EQs, de-essers, parametric EQs, multi-compressor mode. You can saturate with sort of a tube type sound if you want that to be part of it. You can do real-time harmonies, lots of effects from delays to modulations. You want to sound like Peter Cetera and throw some harmonizer on there, you can do that. Doublers, all that stuff. It is a very interesting program, and I've been loving seeing on Instagram all the applications of how vocalists are using it. It's really cool where like there's somebody who they did some sort of collaboration with where it's showing this vocalist and he's just like singing something like straight, just like into an SM7, no effects. And then he's sort of like building the vocal with, adding one layer, and you can kind of see what that sounds like, and then adding another layer, of processing, and then seeing what that sounds like.
Yeah.
And I think his goal was to sound like the 1975s. And it was crazy how it still maintained the core element of the vocal, but then with all this other like options for processing and reverbs and compression, all that stuff was like a totally different voice, like a very studio grade, sort of like very produced voice in the best possible way. And so I thought it was pretty impressive to kind of see. We're only kind of scratching the surface in our application, but they really have done something really cool. And I'm so glad to see them move into this different arena. But the cool thing is that all their plugins are available to you at 30% off once they reach 90 days. And you can use the coupon code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, to get 30% off any of those plugins. So right now, Mantra will not be available for that, but in a couple of months, it will be. But of course, they have all these other great plugins, and they've got some amazing amplifier replications in plugin form from Soldano SLOs to Mark II C pluses from Mesa Boogie and tons of other stuff. Great products, great plugins, and you'll save yourself 30%. Lastly, our friends over at Bestronix are the foremost purveyors of all tools and materials for pedal boards. Whether you need plugs for your audio, whether you need plugs for your RCA, whether you need 2.1 millimeter plugs for your DC power cables, they have it all, including all of the bulk cable to go along with it. You need a part, you ask Brad, he'll tell you what you need. They do fast shipping, family-owned business right outside of Chicago, Illinois. Head over to btpa.com, shop, use the coupon code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, get 10% off your entire order, and tell them the Chairman sent you. Brian, let's resume this conversation.
Yeah.
I have one question for you.
For sure.
About this. And I think that this was something that was asked in our Facebook group, the Chairman of the Board's Facebook group. Yeah. I think it was kind of along the lines of how do you, if you're somebody that's moving into the wireless products, and let's say you need something for your guitars, you need something for your IEMs, you're in a band with a couple of buddies, where would you say would be the best starting place for somebody that needs to kind of move into that sort of arena? They need to be using this stuff. Their band is sort of converting over to it, or their church is converting over to it. What would you say would sort of be Brian's recommended starter pack for guitar players? How would you frame that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think it definitely comes down to like how many packs you're going to be using, how you're going to be hearing them. If you are a musician who plays at their church, that you're bringing the wireless system and putting it on the floor and plugging it into like a monitor mixing P16, like these little control boards, like, a lot of these, it also depends on the system in which how you're running. So if you're running mono or you're running stereo, which a lot of front house mixes are not wired for stereo, they're wired for mono. So even though you think you need to hear it, I mean, there's a lot of guitarists I hear like, oh man, no, I only ever run mono. I mean, it's just like, I think I run it stereo mainly because I wired the whole system. So there's a part of me that's like, I'm gonna do it because I can do it. But I think if you don't have that application and you're just showing up and playing at the church, or you're playing at a gig and you need something simple, you could easily go with like the Sennheiser. It's the one I put earlier. It's this one. It's the Sennheiser EW G4. I'll share it again on here. So it's EW G4. Oh. Because it's it's 1100. You can find these things on Facebook Marketplace for $800 sometimes. Used,
And if you need
obviously.
to expand it, you can just buy more of the packs, or do you need to buy one of these for every?
So that's where it comes into. You can get this for one pack, and it'll do a stereo mix. So like you can look at the back, and it has stereo left and right in, and it has an Ethernet jack if you need to do frequency stuff. But the thing is, like, if you want, like, oh no, I'm only ever going to use mono, and I'm doing with another guitarist or whatever, and we're both going to have mono. It's only us two. You can get another one of these packs right here, and you can actually. There's a setting if you set it to stereo mode, but you pan it far left and the other one far right. You can actually get two mono mixes into this one unit. So that's like on the church I'm at, it's all of the vocal, actually it's pretty much everyone except me and I think the keys player and bass, I can't remember, they all have shared systems. So there's like 4 or 5 of these rack units, and they're all split left and right. And that's where you have to be careful. You just want to make sure that, like, if they're both on the left, then you're going to be sharing the same mix. So when you separate them left and right, you can easily mix your own mix from, like, we're using the Midas system. So we're using the aux outs to go to each of the left and right side of all these, so they can individually control all the levels and stuff. So I would say it depends on that application. If you need to get an extra pack, you could, I do the go to eBay type of thing, because I end up finding just the not cheapest option, but the best deal. I can get a lot of people that are selling them pretty cheap, a couple $100 for a replacement pack, because they can get up to $600-700 for just a pack. So it's just one of those, like, it just kind of depends on how many you need. But I definitely say the Sennheiser G4 in-ear is definitely the way to go, as well as if you're looking for like guitar wireless, you can do the same route. You could do a Shure. Shure has some really good stuff. You could do these Line 6, the G30, G50. Like,
have you done any of the Boss ones? Have you seen those? I think a lot of guys are into the Boss.
I have seen a couple Boss ones.
Or Shure also has a guitar-based one too that's got a tuner built in.
Sure does. They have a tuner-based one, but it's one of those things. It just looks like a long cigar, like that sticks out of the side of your guitar. So I think depending on
I don't think the Shure one though doesn't. Oh, the Boss one does. I think
the Shure one does. Yeah. It has this thing, if I can find it, or if you want to find it, it's like it has something that sticks off. We bought one originally, but for the Guitar Sanctuary, and I worked there for the owner, but then he returned it because there was something with what plugs in the guitar. I want to say it was like
this is the one that I'm thinking of here. I'll share.
Let's see.
I'll share this one because I did this. I've used this on Corey Wong's board a few times when I was doing his rig.
So this is
so it's got the tuner, as the receiver. It's also a receiver and a tuner, and then that's the pack.
Yeah. So they did this. So this is the new version. They actually discontinued the old version. It was just the 16. Now it's the Plus. The Plus, what it does is it gives you a quarter.
So this is the GLX D16 Plus digital wireless guitar.
Yeah. So if you go down to the photos, you'll see on the backside. You're fine.
Here, let me go back to. Let me go back to the photos.
If you go in the photos and you look on the backside of the front, you'll see 2 quarter-inch jacks in.
Yep.
So like that. So that is an input and output. So like if you don't have anything plugged into the input, you can use your wireless and tune everything. But say your wireless dies, as soon as you plug a guitar cable into that input, then you have a line signal. The only downside is if you want to leave an instrument cable plugged in at all time, it's going to see that cable and recognize that as like the main source. So you could slightly unplug it. I wish there was a way for it to both to be active, and then you could put it on like an A/B switcher or something, but they didn't do that, which is fine. That's just not that their design.
I actually think that's cool because I think the original one was just output.
Yep. And that's
I think that's really smart.
Yeah,
I think that's really smart because that's always the issue. Because I would build when I was doing a lot of rigs, I would always build for people that had wireless as a defeat.
Yeah.
So basically, it was just a switch jack where as soon as anything plugged into an input, it would automatically kill the wireless feed. But it's still required that you plug something in, and that's still the way here. So I think that's fine. I mean, nobody expects the wireless to go down, and there, depending on where you are, it may not even help to have an A/B switch, because if it's on the other side of the stage, and you're on the ego ramp, you're still going to have to do something.
Exactly. Well, and that unit, that's probably my favorite Shure mini wireless unit. Like line 6, I like the G50, the G or the G70. Like those are good. They don't have built-in tuners, and especially with that Shure, the GLX one, there's just a lot of little tweakability options you can actually do on it. So you can adjust some of
I think that's just, it's a smart idea, because usually with line 6 or Boss or whoever that are kind of pedal board based versions, you're not doubling up what the actual receiver is doing.
Exactly.
So there's really there's nothing that you're able to kind of replicate or duplicate or replace with it. And so it's just like another thing you have to account for size wise. Yep. And so having this on there is just so convenient, because it's like, gosh, it's all built in. Mm-hmm. Now it's got the cable defeat if you want to plug into it. I don't know, that to me, that seems like a no brainer. If I'm going to go wireless and I need it to be pedal board friendly, this is a pretty cool solution. And it's, if you don't have a full rack, that is for that application.
You'll see a lot of these. I built one for a guy for a quad cortex. It was a quad cortex, this wireless unit, and an expression pedal. So it doesn't eat up a lot of power. I think it's 9 to 15 volt, if I can remember. It says the specs on there. It's like 9 to 15 volt, but it's so much milliamps. So you just gotta be careful about that for power. But it's not very.
Yeah, how many milliamps is this? Is the Shure one?
350, and it's a 12 volt. 350. Yeah, and it's a. I know it's a standard. The older ones had a reverse polarity on it, but
how did they?
Yeah.
I'm trying to see here if it says anything about it on their spec sheet here on
for the Shure or for Sennheiser.
For the
Shure, it's standard polarity. I think it's 9. I think it's 12 to 15. I want to say it's something to 15, because I remember someone wanted.
Yeah, it looks like it's 12 volts.
Nice.
The power supply says 400 milliamps, but that could be, that doesn't necessarily mean what it is.
Yeah. That is by far my favorite, all in one, especially the tuner. That right there takes away a tuner pedal that you have to have extra, especially with the cable in option. It's a really affordable. It was one of my go-tos before they discontinued it, which obviously when they discontinued, I was like, okay, they'll probably come up with something new. So they added, which was really cool. So that's definitely my go-to for a all-in-one pedal board unit. And then, the Sennheiser stuff, I think it comes down to flexibility when it comes on this stuff is like, the rack units are flexible to go into the rack, especially like I'm running a fractal rack thing. So it's like I already have something in a little fly rack. I did the complete opposite. I have a quad cortex board, and then for some reason I decided I want to build like a mini rack, which I think it was just for fun. And so having this kind of stuff and having a rack to do inner monitoring and stuff, it's just having it all in one, because you can get little adapters and stuff to do these micro is it Sure, they have these little camera. I actually saw it from the band of Ghost Inside did it. It's like a camera adapter. It's about this size, but it goes for your camera, but it takes the same type of guitar body pack as a lavalier, and you can use it for doing interviews and stuff. But there you were oh, this might work for guitars, and it did. And they were able to put these micro wireless units under I think they had a temple board or a creation elevation or something really tiny they had to fly with. So there's, depending on the company, they might have something that's really small, that's really reliable. It just kind of comes down to it. So my go-to is definitely that GLXD. Is that what it's called? GLXD 16 Plus?
At GLXD 16 Plus.
Which is great. And Sweetwater has those, and they're awesome. They're very consistent. Like I said, you can do some adjustments to really fine tune. to add some bass or low cut, or there's a bunch of options on there. I remember my a friend of mine, he uses that one. But yeah, the Sennheiser's great. I always talk about, like I said, your in-ear monitors are probably need to be a different brand than your wireless mics and stuff. The Shure makes really great. Sennheiser makes really great vocal mics too, if you need that kind of stuff. We're using GLXD vocal mics for our church, and I found those they're really nice. They're a bit outdated, so there are some newer companies out there. There are some really fancy ones, but that gets up in the very high prices. It really just comes down to your budget too. So I don't have a lot of speakability into the microphone. It's just one of those. I've always seen it. It's like, hey, we're running Sennheiser wireless in-ear monitors and guitars, but we're running this brand wireless mics. It's Shure or something. So I would say, that's kind of what it comes down to. It's just like you could get them all. You might just have to run into some frequency issues like I have been running into. But Sennheiser actually makes this software. It's this wireless. I just downloaded. It's called the WSM Wireless System Manager. And what it does is you actually plug in all of your wireless stuff via like Ethernet cables to each other and daisy them all together, and then plug it into your computer. And then that computer can go and actually search where you are, and it can pull up all of the top frequencies, and it will also like change them all, so you don't have to go, because if you've ever changed a wireless frequency, you have to go into a bunch of sub menus and wait for it to scan. This scans them all at the same time, so it's a cool little unit. Stuff like that can help. A friend of mine, TJ, he's a guitar tech with a couple different bands, and he got me onto it, as well as another friend of mine, Brian. They both use it, and they're like, oh yeah, we get to the venue, we hit scan, it resets all of our frequencies to the packs that we need for that venue or whatever, and it basically cancels out other frequencies that are being used. So, because nowadays, if you're touring in a band, so many bands have wireless units, so you're all kind of fighting for the frequency. So that's
shout out to Tej.
Shout out to Tej. He was
yeah.
He's a playback tech too. So it was one of those like they're like, oh yeah, this is what we use. I'm like, okay, cool. So very helpful.
So one thing that I think is really interesting that is not being talked about much in these circles is, I mentioned if you have a fuzz face or a treble booster or a vintage wah or a Univibe and you're using wireless, that it's a real compromise. There is one product that I think we should mention here that actually is...
Yeah,
it's not a perfect solution because there isn't a perfect solution, but it is as perfect of a solution as there could be when you're using the wireless system, which is made by Axis Electronics, my buddy Mario Marino.
Yeah.
And he makes this thing called an unbuffer. And in essence, what it is, if I were to blow it up here, is you have, your wireless, let's say, would come into the board. Mm-hmm. The output of the wireless would feed the input of this unbuffer, and then send and return would house your impedance sensitive devices, so your fuzzes, your Univibes, your wahs, your treble boosters, anything that would be your Octavias. And then the output would just feed the subsequent pedals. When this is engaged, what it basically does is converts that low impedance signal back to a high impedance signal so that the impedance sensitive devices believe they're seeing guitar pickups. Mm-hmm. And you can turn this on and off as needed, or you could throw this, if you're using a switcher, you could throw the input and output in a loop and leave this thing on.
Yeah.
And you have all the pedals wired in a send and return. So you could kind of engage it as needed. He also has a smaller one, which is just like if you kind of just always want this treatment to be there, which is a little tiny enclosure called the unbuffer here. Nice. And this is also a really, really cool device to have. And so Mario, I think, is the only guy I'm aware of that is making something that addresses like if you need to use wireless or you've got active pickups or you have to address this thing, he has a solution for that. And it's pretty great. It's about as great as you can have the glorious tone of a vintage fuzz face or fill in the blank impedance sensitive device and be able to make it work in your rack. So that is a cool alternative for people that were not previously aware of a way or solution or workaround for the impedance issue that is created by way of those wireless units.
So actually, funny enough, it's in the question, and I want to shout out to the person who actually asked this question. It was Jeff.
Was it Mike?
Jeff Marbut. I don't Marbut. Marbut. If I pronounce your last name wrong, I apologize. But yeah, Jeff was the one who reached out about the wireless systems, and a bunch of people that one person asked, and I'm just on the Facebook page, so I'm just looking at the questions, and someone asked an idea with buffers, like with doing a buffer. So like with this access to the unbuffer, you would go out of, like you said, the wireless into it, and is it just allowing that pedal to work with a buffered signal, but it's in like a loop, so it's unbuffered? Because I'm curious, in some of like the Sennheiser stuff, they're not very long runs, from the rack to like the quad cortex on those the IEMS Romans racks and stuff. But like, do you suggest still running? This is where I'm not as fluent in, because I know how much you love buffers. Like, would you suggest a buffer from the wireless unit to your pedal, even if it's a short run, because of the wireless unit? Or does it kind of just depend?
I would say the general rule of thumb is if you're running a wireless, you don't need an input buffer.
Okay.
This wouldn't apply to what's going out of the pedal board. But and the reason why I would say that is, even though there is variability in the quality of that buffer, just like there is with anything, we've talked about this a lot, it doesn't matter if you just have something that is a buffer, right? Any pedal that's turned on is a buffer.
Yeah.
Quality of that buffer is wildly different from unit to unit. If you have a wireless, however, I think the reason why I would say don't add another buffer is that a buffer is also a gain stage. So even in the quietest of buffers, you're risking adding some more noise, and it could be negligible, especially if it's a high quality buffer. But I don't know that you're gaining anything. I think already there's like a compromise to the tone, and the buffer isn't going to bring that back. The same way that it would if it were cabled. So is it going to hurt it if you have a rig that sometimes is wireless and sometimes not, and you want to have a buffer up front? No. But if you're always using wireless, is it going to hurt it? Or like if you're always using wireless, do you need to add another one? I probably would say no. Like I wouldn't, especially if budget is a concern.
Yeah.
I would just say, okay, the wireless is your buffer for the input, and then let's just focus on output buffers, for this rig.
Yeah.
And then in the unbuffer case, that's just really used for the purposes, again, of those impedance sensitive devices. And I think that probably the one that makes the most sense for most people is the one that was the loop, that has the send and return that you can turn on as you need and then turn off, when you don't need it. And I think that that's kind of a great solution.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. Like, especially because any of these rack units, they're going to have an option for you to adjust like some of your levels and stuff. So if you feel like your input level feels quiet, you can adjust it and add some gain to it. But yeah. No.
Yeah, and it looks like he even offers an option on here where you can add a relay to control the foot switch for that. So if you had a rack or you had a switcher, you could use that to engage that loop and bring it in and out as well.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
So that's pretty handy.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, we could keep talking around in circles about it. I think we kind of covered a good amount when it comes to wireless. It's just one of those things I like, a lot of people have different opinions. It's just a matter of what the application is when it comes down to it. The application, the budget. If it's something that you feel like you really do need to make things a little bit easier, if you need something pedalboard friendly, you got the Shure stuff, you got the Line 6 stuff. It's just a matter of the quality over quantity type of aspect, as well as utilizing stuff like from Access Electronics for stuff like that you need if you have some vintage stuff that you want to run. So I feel like I have said what I have needed to say when it comes to wireless units. Mason, is there any final thoughts that you have before we get back in the Miata, I guess?
I think it's the main thing is just join us over on Facebook. I think it's if you have Facebook, and I know some people are Facebook averse, and I understand, but I'm just giving you a little rundown here. We've got some really we're closing in on 1,000 active members in the group, and it's just people posting questions that they have. There's little chats that have been created by other members, and it's just a really cool space to be able to converse with other people that have been listening to the podcast, that have internalized a lot of the information that we talk about and sort of evangelize as it relates to pedalboard best practices, pedal order, things like that. And I've said this before, that a lot of the questions that get brought up here, they're answered before any of us can even get to the keyboard, because a lot of these folks have been listening to us talk for years, if you can believe it. And they are constantly, either referencing older podcasts or older videos, or kind of almost quoting us verbatim on like a real solution that is pretty much exactly what any of us would say. Yeah. So that's really refreshing to see that. And I think it's just a great resource to have, where there's, of course, other groups that talk about pedalboards and stuff like that. But I feel like this is really a technical space where you can ask these sorts of questions, and you're not just getting advice from anybody. You're getting quality advice that I would say is pretty much vetted through people who have kind of filtered out the bad information. So please join. We'd love to see you there. There hasn't been any weirdness yet, thank God. But for now, it's just a real great community, and we hope to continue to grow it and show our faces and presence there. And we certainly appreciate all those people who have joined. And again, our sponsors, Bestronix, Neural DSP, Guitar Sanctuary. By checking them out, by supporting them, you're supporting us in turn, and we really appreciate everybody. And also, writing us a review is a very helpful thing. If you want to go over to iTunes, or I guess it's Apple Podcasts now, you want to go to Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, most of them have the ability to review us. Any review is helpful. And even if it's a bad review, it's good for us to know where people are landing on these different topics and how they feel. And that helps us make adjustments and get better, or helps people find us. If you're writing a good review and they're like, that resonates with me as a review, I want to check this out. So please do us that favor. We really appreciate it. Thanks, awesome. Brian, for hosting today.
Have a good one. Bye, guys.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Hopefully Grant will be in his new space.
Bye.
All right. See you guys.